friends, thank you for tuning in to Red Ice Creations Radio. This is Henrik Palmgren, and we're coming to you from the west coast of Sverige. You can hear us every Thursday and Sunday through our website, redicecreations.com. For this Sunday program, we had our regular guest Alan Watt scheduled to come on for his monthly spot, but we have not been able to get in contact with Alan today. And these things do happen. I guess it's nothing more than a conflict in the schedule, and I hope that everything is okay with Alan. So what we're going to do today is to listen to one of our subscriber interviews that we did with Peter Levenda back in February this year. The subject is on his excellent Sinister Forces book series, and we are continuing from the regular program in this subscriber interview. And in case you want to tune in to that first segment, just head into our radio archive, go down to the month of February and download. We archive all of our shows, and our regular interviews are all up there for free for you to enjoy. Our next program this coming Thursday, we have Michael Tessarion back on the program. And until then, do take it easy. But now let's enjoy this subscriber interview. Welcome, subscribers. We are speaking to Peter Levenda, and I basically want to continue our conversation. We've been speaking with Peter for about an hour on our regular program, and diving into the subjects of his book Sinister Forces, a 3-volume set. Excellent stuff, diving into the grimoires of American political witchcrafts. But Peter, to get things going in this segment, we kind of left things off a little bit, speaking about Crowley and the connection to the UFOs. One thing that I've kind of been pondering about is regarding the fact that Crowley died in 47, and this is kind of the same time that we had the Roswell crash in New Mexico. And have you kind of find in your work that there are kind of synchronicities, so to speak, in regards to the time or the timeline, if you will?
Well, I do. I see 1947 as kind of a watershed year. In that year, we had the first real UFO phenomenon in the 20th century. I mean, the creation of the term flying saucer was in 1947. Just about a month or so before the famous Roswell crash, we had the sightings of the saucers over the Pacific Northwest. A pilot by the name of Kenneth Arnold saw them and reported them as looking like saucers skipping across the waves, and that's where the origin of the term flying saucer came from. Mm-hmm. And that was in about June of 1947. And then there was the Fred Krisman case, which happened directly after that. And there was a lot of spooky stuff going on with Fred Krisman at the time. It looked as though he was working for an intelligence agency because of the way he set up certain meetings with Kenneth Arnold and with 2 Air Force intelligence investigators who went to investigate the Krisman UFO sighting and who wound up dead. They had taken a box of debris from Krisman that he claimed was UFO debris. They got into their airplane, and their airplane crashed, and the officers died, and no one knows what happened with the debris they had. Then, a little bit later, we had the Roswell crash. At the time of the Roswell crash, the Nazi generals that we had spoken about earlier, Dornberger and some of the others, were taken directly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. In those days, it was just Wright Air Force Base, I believe. Mm-hmm. So they were taken directly to Wright, and where it was assumed were the people who were put in charge of examining the UFO debris. So in the same month, we have Nazi generals going to Wright-Patterson to investigate the UFO debris that was taken from Roswell. Mm. And then in that same period is when the CIA was created, and the national security state, essentially, in the United States was created in 1947 with the National Security Act, which the CIA was a spin-off of. So we have all of these events happening at the same time. And then, of course, we have Crowley dying in December 1st of 1947. Mm-hmm. So it was a kind of watershed year in a lot of areas. Yeah. Parsons and Hubbard involved in 1947. Hubbard conjuring spirits in the desert in California with Hubbard. I mean, bizarre things were taking place in '47, and with Parsons declaring that he was the Antichrist,
yeah,
and was going to oversee the the destruction of the old world and the birth of the new.
yeah.
All of this taking place at the same time in the same year.
It's amazing, and I know that this is a very, very difficult question in that sense, but in regards to the UFO, phenomena, have you in any way been able to kind of pinpoint this more, or have just found that more questions arise when you research it?
Well, I find a lot more questions than answers, and my tendency has been, I mean, I keep changing my mind on this thing because I come up with new information. But I've often wondered if the whole thing was not some kind of an American intelligence operation. Not that UFOs do not exist. I believe that the sightings, many of the sightings, are very suggestive of some kind of phenomenon, and these go back many years, long before there was an American intelligence apparatus. So
yeah.
I'm not discounting the entire field. But as far as the late 20th century experience, it seems to be ridden through with intelligence operatives, people with agendas of their own. And when we talk about Guy Bannister and Fred Krisman and all of these guys who were later involved with the assassination of Kennedy, having cut their milk teeth, as it were, on maybe disinformation activities concerning the UFOs, that seems to make me wonder if there is a deeper connection.
Yeah.
I don't know, quite frankly. I've spoken with, for instance, Whitley Strieber,
yeah, sure.
the author of Communion,
Yeah.
and about his experiences, and he's perfectly willing to entertain the idea that the experiences that he had might have been the result of a military disinformation or brainwashing campaign of some kind. I mean, he grew up around Randolph Air Force Base, which is where the Nazi scientists were based, especially the ones involved in medicine and psychiatry.
And he even has a chip in his ear, I think.
Right, which they found. I mean, which exists.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what does all this mean? Where do we draw the line here between what is UFO fact and what is UFO fiction? There's obviously a UFO fact database somewhere. I mean, of things that genuinely take place.
Sure.
As for the rest of it, I don't know. How much of it is part of the national security apparatus that we now have in our country?
Yeah. Could there be a kind of a merger between the two fields, in the sense that we actually have had genuine sightings from the start, from the get-go, and genuine people who are, having these sightings and so forth, but then later on we have the, the defense industry kind of taking, I guess, using the people and using the field in that sense to kind of, in a way that they actually are engaged in some kind of psyops in connecting with the UFO phenomena and all of this, and connecting, I guess we can even draw in the MK Ultra program, connecting that with the with LSD use and all of this stuff. Do you see a connection between the two?
Oh, well, I do. It's just that I'm having a very difficult time trying to get the entire picture in my mind. I'm like one of the blind men with the elephant, and I keep running around to different parts of the elephant trying to put this picture together, but the elephant keeps moving, and that makes it a bit more difficult.
Yeah, indeed.
But definitely, there is something going on. I mean, there is an element of well, let's put it this way: the disinformation campaign has been very good.
Yeah.
They've caused so much confusion in the minds of researchers and the population in general that we can't tell, we can't separate out anymore the fact from the fiction, as try as hard as we might. Every time we think we know what's going on, we get thrown another curveball, which means, in my way of thinking, there's something definitely real taking place behind all of this. There was a definite UFO presence in America. Something definitely did happen, but there's been so much smoke that's been blown around since then that we're having a hard time seeing it. And I think that in itself is an indication of the seriousness of the UFO contacts we might have experienced in this country.
Yeah. Indeed, another thing here regarding, I guess, if you want to use the term magic, I mean, in your work, have you discovered that this is something real that actually does work in the sense, or is there a difference between something we would call stage magic or, in quotes here, real magic?
Well, absolutely. I mean, from my point of view, magic is a definite, is a reality. It is a technology. the way I approach magic is as a technology of consciousness. I think it's a technology that underlies organized religion. Organized religion couldn't have existed, in my mind, without magic. Magic was the forerunner of I think, all supernatural experiences, whether you want to call it magic or mysticism. I mean, there are two different paths. One is more mechanical, which is magic, and one is more devotional, you might say, which would be mysticism. But they're based on some of the same technology, to use that term. And I think for me, it's a technology. And in our own country, we used remote viewing deliberately during the Cold War to identify locations of Russian submarines and things like that. So we had psychics actually in the employ of the military, but average people being trained by the military to become psychics, to locate foreign defense installations, to try to influence the minds of foreign leaders and that sort of thing. And that's been pretty well documented. We can't avoid it. We can't avoid the fact that supernatural means have been used in our country, and by not just in the United States, but in other countries around the world. The Soviet Union had thrown a lot of money behind psychic research as well.
Yeah.
So what we call magic, it's a loaded term, and it's one that if we continue to use it, we're going to be accused of being the kind of people who wear aluminum hats, you know. So
yeah.
I would like to take it out of that realm if I could, just and call it a kind of technology of consciousness. And I think that in that case, yes, it works. People like some of the famous physicists who have been investigating this kind of phenomenon that I talk about in Sinister Forces have made presentations to the Defense Department showing how quantum consciousness, for instance, could be used by the military. Andrija Puharic was making presentations. He was one of the original 9, and he was making presentations to the military as to how the paranormal could be used as a military weapon. So weaponizing consciousness is something we've been involved with at least since 1950, if not earlier. So our government believes in it to a certain extent. Our scientific community believes in it to a certain extent, perhaps to a deeper extent than we're aware of. And I think that humans around the world should be aware of this and should defend themselves against it by studying it themselves, because this is a field which the government knows just about as little or as much as the rest of us. I mean, they're still pretty much in an experimental stage with this. So I think that we can make a contribution to our own defense by learning what these guys are up to and how they're doing it.
Sure, yeah. You know, if we were to, I guess, look at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, you know, at the, I guess, people who build and run nations and so forth, do you think that at the top there is a common goal, or are we having a world where we, you know, still have, you know, very powerful but fighting nonetheless branches of where we are to kind of go in regards to where the world is you know, headed, so to speak?
Well, that's a good question. And it's a difficult one to answer.
Yeah.
I have the tendency to believe that the leaders of our world, our political leaders, are themselves not necessarily the ones who are calling the shots where this is concerned. I have a tendency to believe, since they're so replaceable, whether through assassination or through voting or through any other means, that these are not the stable figures who are the ones that we should be afraid of. Although they make decisions that ultimately affect us all, and sometimes in very negative ways, I still don't think they're the ones who are really the ones ultimately in power. I think it's I think we should look at a documentary that Bill Moyers did during the Iran-Contra affair about 20 years ago. And he called it The Secret Government. And here's a guy who is not that gullible or credulous. Here's a person who worked in government, who worked at the White House,